the sound of this hall is a little bit stuck on the stage, and this sound system, and I'm taking word out of your mouth, so I'm
stealing my thunder, it's called. Yeah, yeah. But keep going. You're good.
Yeah. How do you say that in German?
I mean, essentially it helps with that, and I'm happy that I have nothing to do with it, not because I don't like it. I'm happy because it takes a while until you know how to use it.
And so we'll come back to that, come back to you. I want to say something about the fact that there are two works on tonight's concert, and the first one in particular. So when you program any concert, you decide, okay, we're going to do this symphony or whatever it is, and then, okay, what else are we going to put with it? In the case of a Mahler symphony, it's really long. What else are you going to put with it? A million choices. Very often the organ symphony will choose something by a living composer for that, like tonight. I love that. Thank you. So we get to hear the music that's being written by people we're sharing the planet with now. And Anna Clyne's music, written right after she found out that her mother had died, is the piece that we're going to hear tonight. And it's so beautiful. And it prefaces a symphony that is, to a large extent, about dying. So, beautiful choice.
I know that when you came here, you wanted to be kind of happy and like, oh, this will be very entertaining tonight. And now we reveal that everything tonight is about farewell, death, the end. It's a long end.
Well, yeah, the last 2 pages of Mahler 9 take several minutes to perform.
Oh yeah.
It's really interesting. There's not much on the page. It takes forever, but it's so beautiful.
Hi, Cecil. It takes forever, but it is. So, I tell you the truth. I actually wanted to do Mahler 9 kind of alone because it's such an intense piece. It's very demanding for everybody who is actually in this room. Because I doubt that you can really sit there and let the music wash over you and think about dinner. That is not the way this piece works. But the organ symphony artistic side, meaning Charles, who was my partner for only 18 years, and David, the music director, said, no, we need to do, and can you please come up with something short, so the concert is not overwhelmingly long, and can you please do something by a female living composer? And I immediately said, well, that one is fairly easy, because what about Anna Clyne? That's how this came about. And the fact, I have done music by Anna Clyne, other pieces than this one, and this one, it is so intensely contrasting to what you are going to hear in the Mahler, because it's a piece for 15 players. You see the stage set, it's fairly, I mean, it's kind of weird and it's kind of empty in the front, and then we play a piece that is maybe 14 minutes long, then there is intermission, and then brace yourself, this is going to be really full. And the Clyne piece is also very subdued. It's not very loud. It goes to forte, meaning loud, once in 14 minutes. Everything else is not like that. But it's it's a very heartfelt expression of loss, grief, in a, at least to me, not sentimental way. There is no sentimentality. It's just that something strikes probably the composer, meaning the sudden death of her mother, and she processes something like that through this piece of music. And there is one thing that is parallel to the Mahler, which is the idea of speechless and solitude. There is a moment in the Clyne that I absolutely adore, where it gets even quieter, and you, in a way, there is nothing to say. And in the Mahler piece, especially in the last movement, we have 3 moments which are what are you going to say? Life is about to end.
There's a famous conversation between Gustav Mahler and Jean Sibelius, in which they talked about music, and Sibelius talked about what he liked about symphonies, the structure of a symphony, and how you can write this theme that relates to that theme and that sort of thing. And Mahler said, no, a symphony should be everything. It should just encompass everything. And that's so true of Mahler's work. But it reveals more than Mahler's thinking. It gives us an approach to listening to Mahler's music. He tried to put into musical form every aspect of the human experience that he possibly could. Joy, passion, tragedy, death, life, death, everything. So the more we bring to it, the more we get out of it. So don't think about dinner while you're listening to it. Try just give it your all, as everyone up here will have to do in order to realize this. And that's a great metaphor for life. With anything, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this symphony, at least to me, is so Mahler, as quite an amount of people in Austria, was absolutely fascinated by the idea of death. We Austrians have a thing with that. And this idea of death in one way or another travels through nearly every symphony, because aside from the symphonies, Mahler, yes, he wrote a couple of songs that are amazing, and even in those you can sometimes find this idea of the end. But how he treats the idea of dying is interesting, because it takes him until his symphony number 9, which essentially is not the symphony you are going to hear tonight, and let me explain that after a while, until he gets really the death is the end. So Mahler was also obsessed with numbers, and he was terrified about the number 9. Terrified, because he knew Schubert wrote 9 symphony, died. Beethoven wrote 9 symphony, died. Bruckner wrote 8.5 symphonies and died. Well, the number 9 is not finished. And so he thought, I'm going to be very smart. I'm going to write a symphony for contralto or baritone and orchestra and tenor and orchestra as my number 9, and I'm going to call it a name, not a number, the Song of the Earth. And he did so, and then he thought, oh, this is nice, and now I can write something that I call number 9, but essentially it's number 10, and nobody will know, and I kind of defied fate. And then he died. But the thing with the idea of funeral is that the way he treats it, and because there is, in a way, there is funeral march in the first, there is this huge funeral thing, funeral festivity in the second, the third doesn't have it, the fourth we go to heaven in glory, the fifth starts with a funeral march, the sixth crushes you, and it's a horrible, quite violent death. I mean, it's everywhere. And then comes the Song of the Earth, and there are, of course, spoken words, and it's more this, we travel, it's more the idea we travel to eternity. And then comes number 9, and number 9, of course, I mean, you can, everywhere where you read something about number 9, they will talk about what Robert just said the last 2 minutes. It's because it's astonishing music. Everything is astonishing music, but those 2 minutes, just, you'll hear what we all mean about that. The one thing that I want to just, as a personal thought, want to say is that, of course, it's kind of understood that this is a symphony of farewell. It's not a requiem for himself, and he didn't write it specifically in saying, okay, I'm done with this, peace out, I'm gone. No, immediately after he wrote this piece, he started on number 10, but unfortunately he didn't complete that at all and died. And the thing that is for me very important to know and to be aware is this is a symphony of struggle. I mean, it's not about, you will see the end is very peaceful, very. I mean, incredible. But what leads to this and how because of things, I mean, we are all, unfortunately in our life, we are confronted here and there with somebody who dies. And when this process of death is accompanied by time, meaning it's not that, oh my God, he had a heart attack, drop dead, sudden. Sometimes you have somebody whom you care very, very deeply for, and this somebody goes away and it's a struggle of months. And it's a terrible disease. Pick one in a certain way. And what I wanted to say about that is, when you, as the person dying, when you go through that, you actually go through different phases before you actually accept what really will happen to you. You know it's coming. But, I mean, you go through, but I loved so much, or I enjoyed the life in the countryside so much, or I was really angry about this and that. And then you struggle and it pains you. And then finally you say, I'm ready. And then life is like, if I may say, tell you this analogy, in this piece, life at the end is like you try to hold water in your hand, but you cannot. It just disintegrates and it's gone, and then everything is over. But it's not a sentimental tragedy to me. For me, more important is this constant, like, it's an anguished symphony, all in all, with a lot of other stuff. Robert said it very, very well. A symphony has to be everything. And this piece you are going to hear is everything. It has moments of depth and love and passion nearly never matched. It has a lot of very strange humor. You will hear in the second movement, it's very kind of, it's one of these 3/4 bars, Ländler and waltz, kind of alternating. And there is moment of sentimental in that, but it's kind of very, I used, just to explain to these fantastic musicians what I mean and what I actually want to hear, I said, you have to play parts of this second movement as if you have Tourette's, meaning you want to say, and it just blurts out. And I don't mean it that in a humorous way. It's just, you'll understand. And the third movement is just angry. It's really angry. And then it, all of a sudden, without announcement, no transition, it just, whoosh, and it calms down, and you are somewhere, you're in a different room, and you think, this is nice, this is great. I remember I tell you things that I said to the orchestra, because we don't waste our time talking about play louder, play longer. When sometimes I used to get, and I told them, you know, this part in the third movement that is very kind of peaceful is like you're having tea, and you're sitting there very chilled and in a very quiet conversation with somebody, and in comes, without knocking at the door, just bursts in your absolutely obnoxious uncle with his 4 boys who wreck the entire place. Just wait, you will understand what I mean. And everybody who has boys. Okay, enough of that. And then comes the fourth movement, which is, yeah, that's a special one.
You reminded me of something that Mahler often said in rehearsals, which was, the important stuff isn't in the notes. And really, no matter how detailed the score is, and Mahler's scores are hyper detailed, it's still a kind of shorthand. And there's much, much, much more that went into putting all those squiggles on the page, and a great deal more that goes into lifting them off again.
I can tell you one thing. I conducted this ninth the first time in around 93. And I remember that because I kind of worked so hard with the orchestra that I was the music director of, and we did okay. And I remember what I said after the performance, because I said, okay, and now I can shoot myself. It has been a while. It has been quite many years ever since. And the great thing about being more experienced in conducting in live in everything is that you take a slightly more distant approach, and somehow you are not shy of immersing yourself in what is there. So it kind of is a contradiction by itself, but I give you so many ideas of what it can be.
When the Danish composer Carl Nielsen was dying, he was in his bed, his family members were all standing around, and he looked at them and said, "You all look like you're waiting for something to happen." And those were his last words. So give some thought to what you'd like your last words to be as you're listening to Mahler 9 tonight. Okay, it's time to hear from Steve Wenig, Vice President and General Manager of the Oregon Symphony, former trumpet player. How long has it been since you played?
15, 20.
So you're a little rusty.
I still got it up here, though.
Good answer. So that's why you're going to bring Jeff Work out here to play his trumpet instead of... Okay.
Absolutely.
The stage is yours.
Well, thank you, sir.
Hi, Jeff.
Please say hi to our Principal Trumpet Jeff Work. So before sharing some details about this, I have to preface it by saying two things, two very, very important things. We call it a sound system, but it's really not. Meyer is an acoustic system. A sound system is what I'm speaking into right now. There's one speaker or a couple of speakers on the side. It's meant for amplification, and essentially it's a PA. Constellation is more about acoustics, changing the acoustics of the room. So that's one thing I want to make sure. It's not really a sound system in the traditional way. And I also want to make sure, I'm hearing this from Carlos, and it's just reminding me, it's technology and innovation is so cool, and it's great to get into the nuts and bolts, but at the end of the day, friends, it's about the music. It's about Mahler. And the second microphones and speakers take upstage of the Mahler, I think we have a problem. So thanks, Carlos, for those remarks. I really, really appreciate hearing them. So why Constellation? How does it work? And we'll talk about we'll give you a couple of demos. So you can talk about acoustics in four ways, four zones of really sonic connection and how we're all kind of connected to each other with our ears. The first is musician to audience, right? That's probably the most important one. But it's not just loud and soft and long and short and high and low. It's all the colors of the orchestra, right? The depth, the amazing sounds of what an orchestra can do, the warmth of sound, the clarity of sound. That's only orchestras can really do. One of the most amazing things I love about working with the Oregon Symphony is just sonically how they sound. It's also about, for musicians, being able to hear each other, right? Because as good as a maestro I have right here, and they use their eyes for conductors, they have to use their ears. So it's about musician to musician connection and hearing each other. That's what they need to do their craft. It's also, believe it or not, the audience sounds to the orchestra. That's another important component of it. They need you. They need to be playing for someone. And it's also about audience member to audience member. We all do this in community, and can you imagine what it would be like applauding with no one around? So the acoustics really, really matter in all those ways. Acousticians have been, okay, I'm going to say this, messing with acoustics for long periods of times in concert hall. And sometimes they make quite a mess of it, I would have to say. They change the shapes of rooms. They use certain building materials to get what they want, a lot of physical properties. If you remember, years ago we had a big reflector in the ceiling, right, that the lights were in to reflect a lot of the sound out to the audience. What they're doing is they're manipulating sound waves, reflections, early reflections, late reflections, and really sound absorptions. What Constellation does, and the neat thing about Constellation, is you can do it all electronically and all digitally. Constellation lets us control, manipulate, and have lots of say over the acoustics of what a great concert hall should be. So how does it work? Well, first let me ask my friend Cecil. We'll point out some of the features of it. But Cecil, if you can play a couple of laps with the horses, you'll be able to see with your ears, I think, a little bit. So you can kind of hear the horse going around the room. Oh, there it goes again.
Mahler would love this.
Yeah. Cowbells, right? We can do it with
we
cowbells.
need more cowbells.
I'm sorry. I'm Glocken. So you can imagine all the speakers. As far as all the equipment, I have a little light shiner here. It uses a whole network of speakers, microphones, and processors. Many of the microphones, actually there are 90, are above the orchestra. I think you can see, I'm trying to point on this small one right here. There's a range. These little black ones, not really these big ones right here in front, those are for recording archive, but there's a whole grid of microphones over the top of the orchestra. There's also orchestra microphones all out in the house. And you can see on top of the balcony or under the balcony, little hockey pucks. There are some more microphones under there. All those microphones are connected, of course, with miles and miles of wiring to a server room that has its own HVAC controls. Because there's so many processors and computers in there, they have to be, of course, air-cooled. And they're connected on the outside to speakers, and a lot of them. We have 300 speakers in this room, and some of them are easy to see, like this guy over here, right? There's another one up here. These are the speakers that are matched to the color, but some are actually hiding in plain sight. So check out the crown over here. So look to your right, and there's two little speakers right to the left and right. There's a number of speakers up on the ceiling as well. If you look, I don't want you guys to hurt your neck, so be careful. But if you can see the cantaloupe textured ceiling, you can see a number of the speakers on the ceiling. And even in the proscenium, inside of these curtains, there's five rectangular, sorry, I can't really see from this angle. That's one. It's five rectangular squares, and there's actually some speakers behind that. And what that does is that provides essentially what the physical acoustics were doing in terms of reverberation and reflections. We're going to do a couple of demonstrations now with my good friend Jeff. Jeff, you're going to play Leonore Overtures, right? Leonore 3. And we'll do it first with the system on as normal. Let's do that one more time, please. And this time, we're going to turn the system completely off. Listen in between the notes. Listen for the space in between the notes. Pretty dead, pretty dry. Clear though, right? You can hear all the elements. Now let's do it one more time and really test the system. Imagine you're in 18th century cathedral in Europe, narrow sides, but a huge voluminous space above your head, all brick or all cement buildings. What would that be like, and can Constellation duplicate that? Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Work, everybody. So the number of variations and settings we can do, I mean, it's really endless, but I'll tell you guys, it's a rabbit hole and it's a long one. And you don't want to go down there. The best thing about it, the system, is like those old Ronco commercials on TV with the air fryer or the crock pot. You set it and forget it, and never, ever let it upstage what you're doing for the art in Mahler. Thank you, sir.
Ron Popeil, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Steve Wenig, VP and GM of the Oregon Symphony. Thank you. That was really interesting. I think it's wonderful that this happened. And yeah, and you can change it for different pieces, right?
Yeah, you could. We could change the lighting for different pieces. We can change...
Okay, rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Got it. So, concluding remarks, Maestro?
Well, just because we talked about this sound system, the great thing is that...
Acoustic system.
The acoustic system. Is the great thing is, Steve just said it, just forget it. And I also forget it as an audience member. You got a great demonstration with 3 times absolutely wonderful, flawless fanfare call. But you would be, if you would be very kind of little-minded, tempted that every movement in something complex like Mahler, you'd have to just, I need a little bit more violin, and and the system probably can do that. But the great thing about is, let's figure out the system here, which takes a while, put it there, and leave it alone. And I think that's a very, very wise decision, and you all are going to enjoy it.
I'll be happy. I'm sorry, one thing. We have to get the orchestra on stage, but if you have any specific questions, I'm going to be hanging out down here for the next 15, 20 minutes. Be more than happy to chat and answer them.
Oh, that's a good idea. Steve Wenig, Carlos Kalmar, Robert McBride, and you. Most
and
important
Jeff
of all.
Wenig.
Thank
and
you.
Jeff Work.
Jeff Work.
Yay! Okay.